You caught her with someone else's hands in her cookie jar. Her is a serial cheater, and there is no way you are her child's father. You lent Miss Walker your car to help her with her child, and she never gave it back, so you are suing her.
Eventually, she gave me her number.
He seemed like he was a gentleman courting you. You went out with him?
When I found out I was pregnant, I told him. He said that he saw me in the car with another guy, but it was true, but it was a family member.
Okay, that took too long. So it was not a relationship. So you all were having sex.
Yeah.
Without protection.
Pretty much.
But not in a relationship.
And he has said, well, I need to take a DNA test because he said he didn't trust me.
But she admitted to cheating, though. Have you been seeing anybody else? She said no. I asked her again, I asked her again. She finally said yeah, she was talking to another guy when I was gone. That's what you said. That's what you admitted to me.
There are moments in life where the truth does not just reveal itself. It reshapes every relationship connected to it. In Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom, truth is never quiet. It speaks through DNA tests, through trembling voices, through broken trust, through people who believed they were ready for answers, but later regret taking the test, because truth changes everything. This is not just conflict. This is the emotional crossroads where love, law, and loyalty collide. The case unfolds in a courtroom led by Judge Lauren Lake, a space known publicly for emotional honesty and legal clarity. Those who arrive here do not simply come to confirm biology. They come to challenge identity, loyalty, and the fragile connections that hold families together. The atmosphere is serious yet compassionate, shaped by Judge Lake's approach to combining the relationship between law and justice into something deeply human. She believes justice is not only a verdict, but also a moment of emotional reckoning. That belief stands at the heart of this courtroom. In this case, several parties have come forward with painful stories surrounding parenthood, betrayal, misunderstanding, and unanswered questions. Each individual brings not only their testimony, but also their history, their frustration, and the quiet ache that has lived inside them for months or even years. One partner insists they are the father of a child. Another denies it entirely. There are accusations, contradictions, shared memories, overlapping timelines, and emotional confessions. The DNA test becomes the central piece of evidence, a tool capable of dismantling or restoring entire lives. For some individuals in this courtroom, the DNA test represents hope. For others, it is fear. Many have heard stories where people regret taking such tests because once the truth emerges, relationships fracture, trust collapses, and families divide. Yet the court emphasizes that truth, even when painful, is the only stable foundation for a child's future. The courtroom discussion touches on how the truth changes everything podcast, and similar public conversations have explored how secrets inside families are often generational. Judge Lauren Lake reminds everyone that understanding the past can either break a cycle or continue it. This courtroom does not just determine facts, it challenges people to confront themselves. Conversations arise, referencing legal interpretation and emotional lived reality. The judge emphasizes how the concept of justice in jurisprudence is not limited to written law, but also moral accountability. She reminds everyone that justice is not simply who is right or wrong, but who is willing to grow from the truth. During the hearing, questions about fidelity and commitment arise. Accusations of cheating, misunderstandings, late-night phone calls, and trust broken in private settings are brought into public record. These stories resemble many DNA test cheating stories people hear online, where assumptions, jealousy, and rumors complicate already fragile emotional worlds. But here, the storytelling is not entertainment. It is evidence. The evidence stage in a divorce case is mentioned as analogy, where the smallest detail, text message, or timeline inconsistency may shift the emotional balance. The tension in the courtroom increases as each side describes their version of the truth. Judge Lauren Lake listens closely, intervening when voices rise too sharply, guiding when confusion threatens to overwhelm testimony. One recurring theme in the discussion is how people sometimes confuse emotional hurt with actual evidence. The judge explains how the Adverse Inference in Evidence Act applies when someone refuses or avoids producing critical evidence, such as a test or document. In this setting, truth is encouraged instead of avoided. She reminds each individual that refusing clarity only prolongs pain. In this emotional environment, the conversation shifts to broader reflections. References to the game-changing Attorney podcast arise, highlighting how emotional intelligence in legal practice changes outcomes. The judge acknowledges that law is never only about rules. It is about human lives. Tears, silence, confusion, and courage all have a place in this courtroom, but clarity must guide the final decision. The case also brings up themes similar to those explored in Celebrate Recovery testimonies, where individuals describe hitting emotional lows before choosing to heal. Some parties admit their mistakes openly, while others still cling to denial. The judge respects their pace, but asserts that truth will not wait forever. Healing can only begin when reality is acknowledged. At one point, someone compares the emotional turmoil to conversations from the Divorce Course podcast, where separation is not simply legal but existential. The courtroom recognizes that family is complex. Breaking or rebuilding requires more than judgment. It requires acknowledgement of emotional wounds. Discussions also emerge around legal responsibility. The obligation of a parent extends beyond emotional acceptance. There are financial and legal responsibilities. The courtroom references how the Supreme Court child support standards ensure that the child's welfare remains central. No matter how adults feel about one another, the child must not suffer the consequences of confusion or avoidance. The judge explains that the courtroom does not assign love, but it does establish duty. If the test confirms paternity, the parent must step into their role fully. If the test excludes them, they must accept the result without resentment or further emotional harm. The case takes additional turns when someone brings up adoption stories' full episodes, comparing the emotional depth of those journeys to the current moment. The courtroom acknowledges that parenthood is not only biological, it is also emotional, relational, and sacrificial. However, the biological truth still matters, as it forms the legal basis for identity. Throughout these conversations, Judge Lauren Lake continues to emphasize compassion, responsibility, and honesty. She reminds everyone that the courtroom is not here to shame, but to clarify. She acknowledges the hurt in everyone's voice and recognizes their emotional exhaustion. But she also encourages them not to fear the truth. Avoiding truth traps people in conflict. Confronting truth allows the possibility of rebuilding. Every participant understands that the result of the DNA test will either validate or shatter expectations. Some silently hope the truth aligns with love. Others hope it aligns with escape. But in the end, the truth will not choose sides. It simply reveals what is. The tension is heavy. No one speaks lightly. Everyone knows that their future may change in moments. The first 1,500 words end here, with the courtroom waiting, breathing, bracing, and holding on to the last quiet seconds before the truth is spoken aloud. The emotional weight inside Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom becomes heavier as the case progresses. The people present shift between hope and fear, understanding and denial, blame and vulnerability. This space is more than a place of legal process. It has become a stage where every unspoken word finally rises to the surface. The judge maintains a calm but firm tone, guiding the emotional current so that clarity can emerge from confusion. The individuals involved express the complexity of their relationships. One partner describes how their bond once felt strong, while the other reveals how mistrust formed slowly over time, growing through small misunderstandings and unspoken doubts. These emotional moments reflect a deeper truth familiar to many. Relationships can unravel without anyone noticing until it is too late. This courtroom becomes a place where people try to retrace their steps to understand how they arrived here. The relationship between law and justice once again stands out. Judge Lauren Lake explains that law deals with facts, timelines, tests, and statements. Justice, however, is about fairness, emotional truth, accountability, and healing. She speaks about how the legal truth of a DNA test can force emotional truths to emerge. The law can confirm facts, but only honesty can restore trust. Many of those present carry emotional exhaustion from arguing, defending, crying, hoping, and fearing. When they speak, their voices tremble not because they lack confidence, but because the truth carries emotional weight. The judge acknowledges this emotional fatigue, but encourages everyone to remain open. Discussions continue regarding previous arguments, accusations of cheating, and changing behaviors in the relationship. One party insists that certain actions were misunderstood, explaining that emotional stress led to emotional reactions. The other side insists the actions felt intentional and deeply hurtful. These disagreements show how two people can live in the same relationship, but experience it in entirely different ways. The DNA test cheating stories shared online often mirror these moments. The judge reminds everyone that cheating accusations rarely come from nowhere. They come from somewhere inside: fear, insecurity, memory, or evidence. Sometimes people accuse because they are afraid of loss. Other times they accuse because they have been hurt in the past and their heart is still protecting itself. In this case, both emotional patterns and real-life situations overlap, making the situation even more tangled. There is further dialogue about financial support and emotional participation. One side expresses how they felt abandoned during difficult times, like pregnancy or the earliest months of the child's life. The other side describes how they felt excluded or blamed unfairly, making them withdraw to protect themselves. Judge Lake listens carefully, reminding them that children cannot be raised in confusion. They need stability, honesty, and care. This leads into the topic of Supreme Court child support principles, which focus on ensuring a child's needs are met regardless of emotional history between parents. The court emphasizes that responsibility is not optional and cannot be avoided simply because emotions are complicated. If the DNA test proves paternity, the obligation becomes permanent. If the test disproves paternity, the obligation ends. The clarity is simple when the truth is known. As the discussion continues, Judge Lauren Lake encourages the individuals to speak not just their accusations, but their vulnerabilities. She asks questions that help reveal emotional motivations. Why did you feel alone? Why did you stop trusting? Why did no one speak openly sooner? Answers come slowly, and sometimes through tears. People describe moments where they felt misunderstood, unseen, or betrayed. They explain how their mistakes were not meant to cause harm, but came from fear, confusion, or emotional instability. The judge does not excuse harmful behavior, but she acknowledges its emotional origins. She reminds everyone that understanding is not the same as justification. Awareness does not erase consequences. The emotional dialogue continues into topics similar to those heard on the Divorce Course podcast, where separating couples reflect on how relationships break from the inside before they break on the outside. Judge Lake emphasizes that this courtroom is not just about evaluating the past, it is also about shaping the future. She encourages each person to think beyond the test result and imagine how they want to live after this moment. At this point, the conversation shifts toward identity of the parents, and identity of the child. The judge speaks about how children deserve to know where they come from, emotionally and biologically. They deserve to grow up without confusion about their origins. The courtroom discussion touches on stories similar to Adoption Stories full episodes, where identity becomes central to emotional development. Whether a parent is biological or not, the truth of that identity matters. The Celebrate Recovery testimonies are mentioned again. These are stories where people reach emotional clarity after years of pain, addiction, heartbreak, or guilt. The courtroom atmosphere mirrors those emotional transformations. People speak about regrets, about wishing they had communicated sooner, about wishing they had been emotionally stronger or more reliable. The judge acknowledges these emotional truths. She explains that this courtroom is not here to punish emotional imperfections. It is here to uncover truth so healing can begin. She encourages everyone to think about how they want to be remembered by the child years from now. She asks whether the child will remember avoidance, denial, conflict and resentment, or truth, stability, and emotional maturity. As the emotional testimony continues, the Adverse Inference in Evidence Act becomes relevant again. The judge clarifies that refusing honest answers, refusing transparency, or refusing to participate in truth-finding indirectly implies guilt or fear. She emphasizes that courage here means facing truth, even when the truth is uncomfortable. The judge often reminds the individuals that the law does not measure emotional pain, but emotional pain shapes how people respond to the law. This is where jurisprudence meets humanity. The courtroom is structured, but the hearts inside it are fragile. At this stage, hope and fear become almost indistinguishable. For one person, the DNA test may confirm a lifelong bond. For another, it may break apart what they believed was real. This is the essence of why people regret taking the test, not because the test is wrong, but because the truth is irreversible. Once spoken aloud, the truth cannot be undone. The courtroom atmosphere becomes quiet. Conversations slow down. People stop interrupting and begin listening. Everyone begins to understand that the result will not simply be information, it will be transformation. Judge Lauren Lake prepares to move toward the test results. She reminds the courtroom that whatever the truth is, they are capable of handling it. She encourages them to understand that the truth is not the end. It is the beginning of the next chapter. The second section ends here with the final moments before the verdict, where silence becomes heavier than words, and everyone breathes slowly, waiting for Judge Lake to speak. The courtroom reaches a moment of deep stillness as Judge Lauren Lake signals that the results of the DNA test will soon be addressed. Everyone present feels the gravity of what is about to happen. The quiet is not empty. It is full of unspoken fear, unspoken hope, and the emotional tension of lives suspended in uncertainty. The truth is close now, and no one can avoid it any longer. The individuals involved sit with a mixture of anticipation and dread. They understand that the next words spoken in this courtroom may either restore trust or shatter it permanently. This is the moment people often refer to when they say that truth changes everything, because it does. Some people hope the truth will set them free. Others hope it will confirm their belief in love. But the truth does not bend to desire. It stands firm, absolute, unmoved by emotion. Judge Lauren Lake explains one last time why the process matters. The court is not here to humiliate or condemn. The court is here to bring clarity and to protect the emotional and legal rights of the child. She reminds the parties that the relationship between law and justice is not always smooth. Law deals in evidence and definitions. Justice deals in healing and humanity. Her courtroom works to balance both. Before the results are read, individuals are given the opportunity to speak from the heart. Their words are not arguments or defensive responses anymore. They are reflections. Some express remorse for past mistakes. Some express exhaustion from the emotional weight they have been carrying. Some express a fragile kind of hope. Hope that things might finally make sense. This emotional openness resembles the tone of celebrate recovery testimonies, where individuals acknowledge their flaws without trying to hide them. There is a raw honesty now, the kind that only appears when denial is no longer possible. Judge Lauren Lake nods, recognizing the courage it takes to speak truth aloud, especially when it is uncomfortable. The conversation transitions to the long-term consequences of the result. The judge speaks gently but firmly about Supreme Court child support expectations. She explains that once the truth is established, the court has the authority to ensure the child is supported emotionally and financially. Parenthood is not just a feeling, it is a duty. If the test confirms paternity, responsibility is not optional, whether the relationship survives or not. The individuals reflect on how their lives intersected and where they drifted apart. They acknowledge misunderstandings, emotional insecurity, absence of communication, and the ways unresolved fear led to defensive behavior. This reflection echoes lessons often heard in the Divorce Course podcast, where emotional conflict in relationships is not just about what happened, but about what was not said when it needed to be. At this point, Judge Lauren Lake revisits the concept of adverse inference in Evidence Act, explaining how reluctance or resistance to clarity can lead to assumptions of guilt or avoidance. She acknowledges that sometimes people avoid truth not because they don't care, but because they care too much and fear the result. Yet she insists that courage lies not in pretending to be right, but in accepting reality with grace. One individual speaks softly about regret, not only about moments where loyalty was questioned, but also about the emotional damage that arose from silence and doubt. There is mention of the emotional isolation experienced during pregnancy, comparable to the emotional loneliness sometimes described in adoption stories' full episodes, where identity and belonging are deeply intertwined with care and acknowledgement. The judge listens without judgment. She explains that emotional pain does not excuse harmful actions, but it does help explain them. She encourages everyone to let this moment be a turning point rather than a conclusion. At last, the DNA test results become the center of attention again. People breathe slowly and deliberately, as though preparing their hearts not just to hear the truth, but to accept it. Everyone understands that people regret taking the test only when they are unprepared to honor the truth it reveals. The judge reminds them that maturity is demonstrated not by perfection, but by how we respond to truth. The emotional weight is palpable. There is no anger now, only quiet vulnerability. Everyone has said what they needed to say. Everyone has explained their fears and their hurt. Everyone has been heard. Judge Lauren Lake prepares the courtroom for what comes next. She reminds them, if the results confirm paternity, the parent must step forward with commitment, not excuses. If the results disprove paternity, the parent must let go without bitterness, but with respect and closure. She reinforces that children deserve clarity, emotional stability, and honest relationships, not relationships built on confusion or resentment. The courtroom acknowledges that whatever the truth is, it cannot be avoided anymore. The DNA test does not care about fear, pride, guilt, or longing. It only reveals what is. And now the emotional climax is not loud. It is quiet. Quiet, because everyone understands that truth is final. Quiet, because this moment changes the emotional structure of every relationship in the room. Quiet, because the last uncertainty is about to be erased. The test results are now read in the courtroom, and in that moment, everything shifts. Some hearts break. Some hearts heal. Some relationships fall apart. Some are rebuilt stronger than before. But the truth, once spoken, brings clarity to confusion. The courtroom processes the results slowly. Judge Lauren Lake offers guidance, comfort, accountability, and emotional counsel. She does not allow anyone to attack or belittle one another. She encourages honesty, respect, and forward movement. She reminds both sides that the test result does not define worth, identity, or moral value. It simply clarifies biology. What happens next is defined by the choices each person makes. Choice to heal, choice to support, choice to let go, choice to forgive, or choice to rebuild differently. Whether the result confirms fatherhood or denies it, the judge ensures every person leaves with direction. She explains steps for child support if needed. She encourages emotional counseling if needed. She guides them toward resources to rebuild stability and self-respect. She speaks about communication, closure, and the emotional responsibility that comes with truth. The courtroom does not simply end in a verdict. It ends in understanding. This final phase resembles the emotional peace found in Celebrate Recovery testimonies, where acknowledgement leads to release. There is no perfect resolution. There is simply clarity. And after so many months of confusion, clarity feels like relief, even when it hurts. The individuals leave the courtroom changed. Some walk out with new responsibility. Some walk out with freedom. Some walk out with grief. But all walk out knowing the truth. And as Judge Lauren Lake always emphasizes, the truth is the beginning, not the end.